Good morning and welcome to the Lake Norman Chamber of Commerce Focus Friday. I'm Bill Russell, President of Lake Norman Chamber of Commerce. I want to recognize the 2020 Chairman of the Board for the Lake Norman Chamber, Richard Pappas, to welcome everyone.
Good morning. Thanks, Bill, and welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us for this great content. Thank you to our speaker and our sponsor, and we really appreciate those that tune in this morning, and we'll watch this on the recording in the future. This is one example of the great material that we try to provide for our members during this current challenging time. So we hope you benefit from it. And again, thank you for tuning in.
Thank you, Richard. We also have Jennifer Husky. Novant Health Huntersville Medical Center is our presenting sponsor of Focus Fridays. Jennifer, can you tell us some of the activities and events going on at our Huntersville Medical Center?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, I want to thank you guys for hosting our chat with Dr. David Priest back at the end of September. I understood it was very well received, very good information. He's phenomenal. And we are actually working on a follow-up to that first quarter of 2021 so that we can revisit the dashboard, compare it to trends, and kind of look at what's coming down the pike for vaccines and the future for COVID. So I wanted to make sure I mentioned that, as well as we are currently in a fundraising state at Novant Health through our foundation. We are working, you may have heard quite a while ago, and it sort of got tabled, our PEDS ED is coming to town right there at Huntersville. It's a NASCAR themed facility, so it'll be a little bit more kid friendly, less scary. And we're starting a brick campaign that we would love people to know about. And if they have any interest in being a part of that and having their name or their college bill, whatever, on a brick representative for the PEDS ED, you can just reach out to me and I will make sure that that gets in the right hands. But we're working on that through the end of the year, and we love all of your participation. So thanks for letting us sponsor. We're always proud to be here.
Thank you, Jennifer. And actually, Novant is going to be a sponsor of an upcoming program we have. Our golf tournament is absolutely sold out on October 26th. It's been sold out for several weeks, if not a month. But we have a 0K event. So it's all the fun without the run. But Novant is going to be our face mask sponsor because we're going to socially distance. We're going to do that in a safe manner. We're going to make sure everybody has face masks on. We want to make sure everybody is safe at that event. But Novant is our face mask sponsor, and we're glad to have you on board for that.
Thank you.
Want to recognize Jeff Tart, who is our public policy chair. And Jeff, you saw the candidate forum last night. It was a lively event. We're going to be putting, if you didn't see it, which we had on WSIC and Facebook Live, we're going to be putting that up on the website within the weekend. It was a candidate forum which spotlighted our District 1 Mecklenburg County Commissioners, our House seat number 98, and our Senate seat 41. And I thought I was watching the second battle of Cowan's Ford, Jeff.
Lots of fun.
It was lots of fun. It certainly, there's some distinct differences in the approach to politics from those particular individuals. So if you didn't get a chance to see it first time around, we would encourage you to watch it when we put the Zoom recording up. Jeff, can you go ahead and introduce and say a little bit about our speaker today?
Actually, the speaker today, I could probably spend the rest of the hour talking about. He is one of the most talented and gifted elected officials that we have serving in the state of North Carolina, and we're very fortunate to have him here this morning with us. But before I introduce our state treasurer, everybody that's following along, Dale, we're going to give the floor to Dale here in a couple of minutes and let him give us an overview and an update on the state of North Carolina and things going on from the treasurer's office. But if you have questions, and we'll have a little bit of time at the end to go ahead and submit those into the chat room, and we'll try to get those and try to get to as many questions as you can. because I have a page full of things I'd like to ask. But with us this morning is Dale Folwell, who is our state treasurer. He prior was served, I believe, about 8 years in the North Carolina House of Representatives, was the second ranking member in the House, serving as the deputy pro tem for that body and chamber. He's been involved in a number of positions as he's served and been elected to the state treasurer. He's in a unique thing, and I'm going to ask him about this a little bit, a little unusual, that he's actually got an accounting degree, and undergraduate and master's in accounting, and he's a certified public accounting, taking care of the books in the treasury for the state of North Carolina, which I find fascinating to actually have somebody with the expertise to do the job actually in the role. Dale, one thing we'll get to a little bit later, but I want to highlight in his role prior, he served as a deputy secretary in the unemployment insurance area for the state. And we're going to explore this a little bit if we get some time, but I want viewers to understand this is the type of thing that the press never carries. It kind of gets buried in all the minutia of all the big issues and the things that we listen to. But Dale is almost singularly responsible for fixing and solving a $2.6 billion debt obligation to the state through the unemployment insurance loan program that we had with the federal government. And I will share with you, because I was in the middle of watching this transpire, that we were on a glide path, that not being able to pay that loan back over expeditious fashion, the interest rates alone would have potentially put the state at financial risk. I mean, it is a big, big deal. I will tell you, it may be financially the most important thing that was resolved in the last 20 years in the state of North Carolina. And we have with us this morning the gentleman who solved that and fixed that and was able to repay that loan in, I think, about a 3-year time frame. Really saved the state financially. But with that, I'm going to give the floor to our very own state treasurer, Dale Folwell. Dale, as always, as a friend and colleague, it is an absolute pleasure to have you here with all us, the business leaders in the Lake Norman area.
Well, thank you, Jeff. Any questions? No, just kidding. Thank you for that great introduction. Mayor Whitty, it's great to see you. And of course, Mayor John Anarella serves on our investment advisory committee. I'm going to spend a few moments talking about the state of the state, where we are financially, and my comments will be specifically aligned with things that your chamber is working on and thinks about. I'll spend just a moment on the pension plan, because you directly may not be on the pension plan, but 1 out of 10 adult North Carolinians who are public servants at the local and state level are. And I'm going to tick and tie all that back into our AAA bond rating, which was just reaffirmed, give you some great news about some bonds that we issued last week. A moment about what's frustrating me right now, another couple of minutes about where my fears are, and then open up for questions. As I told Bill earlier, I could get emotional. There are things in this world worth getting emotional about these days. I'll be getting highly mathematical. So Jennifer, if math makes you nauseous, you probably should zoom out now. But I will not be getting political. So let's get started by saying that a few months ago, we applied for and received over $4 billion of COVID CARE Act money. This was part of the multi-trillion-dollar piece of legislation that was passed in Congress. In good Lake Norman fashion, as soon as that money hit the treasurer's office, we put that into interest-bearing accounts. But very soon thereafter, $471 million of that money got swept out and was allocated to 3 counties and 1 city in North Carolina. Those 3 counties being Wake, Guilford, and Mecklenburg, and the 1 city being Charlotte. And I often get asked, not by anybody in Charlotte, why didn't Raleigh get any of that money? And the answer is mathematical. During that period of our COVID life, and by the way, Mayor, I'm glad you're feeling better. I was hospitalized in intensive care in the end of March with COVID-19 before anyone knew what to do with the situation. And so I'm glad to see you on the Zoom this morning, and hope you're having a good recovery. But when Congress set this law, they set a population of 500,000 people. And even though there's a lot of people in Raleigh, because of the other large incorporated areas of Wake County, there aren't 500,000 people in the city limits of Raleigh. So 471 million got swept out for 3 counties and 1 city. And then the other $3.5 billion was appropriated, allocated, voted on, and signed by the governor over the last 9 weeks by the General Assembly. Jeff can correct me on this, but I believe every member of the House and the Senate, Democrat and Republican, voted in favor of the COVID legislation, which allocated the other $3.5 billion. My second thing, and I'm going to start stacking these because it becomes important, as you've been hearing since Valentine's Day, that the state could be facing a $2.5–3 billion deficit. On top of that, we have over $2 billion of budget surplus from the last fiscal year, and that's going to be very helpful as we close the gap. On top of that, we have $1 billion, over $1 billion of rainy day fund, and even though we're way down the alphabet, and our blessings and prayers go out to everybody that's been affected by these storms, not just in North Carolina, but to be as far down the alphabet as we are and not have as much damage as we've had in North Carolina is a miracle from God. But we have over $1 billion there. And then Jeff mentioned about the unemployment trust fund. I no longer run the unemployment trust fund, and I appreciate the accolades, but I'm going to actually push that power and credit down elsewhere. When I was sworn in 7 years ago as the Assistant Secretary of Commerce of North Carolina, I inherited not just one of the most bankrupt systems with over $2.6 billion in debt. It was also broken. Our quality scores for almost the entire decade, the quality of getting checks to people correctly and quickly were behind every state in the country and Guam and Puerto Rico. Those were our quality scores. So it wasn't just a broke system, it was a broken system. And thanks to the hardworking folks at the Division of Employment Security, the legislature, which changed the law, which I had nothing to do with, I just implement the law. And more especially the members of this call, the businesses across North Carolina who pay into this system, that debt was defeased and $1 billion surplus was built in 31 months. Now, what I want to tell you is that this unemployment system, you need to think of it like you would State Farm, Farm Bureau, Allstate, or Geico. It is a captive insurance company. It really only gets money from the businesses of this state in order to pay out claims to the claimants. It's sometimes used, obviously this year, as a pass-through when the federal government does benefits, but the Unemployment Trust Fund of North Carolina doesn't get state money or federal money. It gets premiums from employers like you. And you may be asking yourself, why should I care about this topic? The reason you should care is that for the entire century almost, up until 2014, the businesses across North Carolina, every business across North Carolina, have been paying FUTA and SUTA surcharges on their payroll. So, and not only that, but it gets stacked. So if it's 20 basis points in year one, and you still have a negative balance, it's another 20 basis points. And if you still have a negative balance, it's another 20 basis points. And Jeff sort of alluded to, this starts becoming, 1.5% of payroll. Now, we have businesses across North Carolina before COVID that were operating on 1.5% margins. I think on every product that's sold at Harris Teeter is probably a 2.3% margin. So we're talking about just a surcharge on payroll. So your payroll taxes were increasing while the government was trying to encourage you to retain and hire people. Very perverse. Ultimately, after I left, because of the great economy in North Carolina, this unemployment trust fund reached over $4 billion in surplus, not deficit. And even after 6 months after COVID and nearly 1 million people unemployed, it still has nearly $2.5 billion in trust fund positive balance. Now, the reason, Bill, that becomes more important, and Mr. President, is simply this. There are states that are very close to where you are right now that are at risk for going negative on their unemployment trust fund balances. We hope that doesn't happen. We wish them the best of luck, but it could present an economic advantage, again, for North Carolina businesses when you're able to give the certainty to businesses who want to expand or come to North Carolina through the Lake Norman Chamber of Commerce, give them certainty that they're not going to be hit with surcharges where they may be hit with surcharges in another state that they're thinking about going to. So that's all great news. On the pension plan crossed $108 billion last week. That is the highest level of money that's ever been in the plan. It is billions above what it was valued at on Valentine's Day of this year. And that's after paying out $3 billion in benefits since Valentine's Day. Yeah, you heard that right. This pension plan is paying out nearly $550 million every 30 days. If you multiply that times 12, the amount of money the pension plan is paying out every year on a gross basis exceeds the state debt, to give you some context of the enormity of this. So the pension plan's in great shape. Last fall, before anybody had heard of COVID, I had our pension plan stress tested. Moody's is to me what a credit score would be to you, or a sanitation grade would be to one of the restaurants that's a member of the Chamber of Commerce. Moody's came out and said this pension plan was #1 in the country in terms of its ability to stay funded during an economic shock. And as interested as our teachers and troopers and other public servants are, and by the way, this is local and state employees, every public servant in this state, except for Charlotte Fire and Winston-Salem PD, are participants in this pension plan. So the Moody's came out and said we were #1 in the country in terms of our ability to keep it funding during an economic shock. I sort of lost my train of thought. The reason that should matter is that as curious as our people are about assumed rates of return and life expectancies, at the end of the day, we're in the check delivery business, and that's what our retirees care deeply about. My frustration is with Congress. As you can imagine, we appreciate the COVID CARE Act money that we received, but the bottom line is it has strings attached, as Jeff and others on the call will know. Anytime they send money anywhere, it has a string attached, and that string stays attached when it comes through Raleigh and then ultimately to the cities and the counties as they move forward. So the string once, for example, was the money had to be used for COVID-related activities. What in this world is not COVID-related activities, starting with the fact that I had to bring my own bacon to your Chamber of Commerce meeting this morning? Everything is COVID-related. And the fact is that it would have been nice for them to loosen that string a little bit so that the state, the county, the cities of North Carolina could have used that money to backfill their budget shortfalls associated with people being locked in place, unable to consume, therefore not being able to generate the sales, the gas, the occupancy, and the income tax, which are necessary to fund things that we all care deeply about: public education, public safety, public roads, and public works. So as we move forward, I want to speak a moment about my fears. My fears today are for rural North Carolina, especially eastern rural North Carolina. If y'all were to, I got back from Raleigh really late last night, but if we were all to go to the Outer Banks today and you came and picked me up in Winston-Salem, and then we drove to the Outer Banks. Don't drink a lot of Bojangles tea before you make that trip, but as we were to do that, we would eventually go through Terrell County. And the blood that runs through me is Quaker. I grew up, hang on just a minute, please.
And Jeff, that's brought to you by.
I think he's dealing with staph issues of the four-legged kind. I have the same issue every morning.
So anyway, sorry. If we were to drive to Outer Banks, we would eventually go through Terrell County. Terrell County is the last county you go through before hitting the Outer Banks. I was the commencement speaker this year in Terrell County, the only high school in the county, 38 graduates. The total number of people in Terrell County today is less than the student faculty population at Myers Park High School. What I haven't told you is that half of Terrell County does not pay property tax because of who owns the property, which is mainly the state and federal government. And now what I haven't told you is that between Valentine's Day and July 4th, the sales tax revenue of Terrell County fell 26%. So when the cost of public education, public safety, public works, and public roads is increasing, you have the population of a high school, half your property is not taxable, and your sales tax drops 26%, you can see why the funding for public education, public works, public safety, and public roads becomes so vital. So that's where my fears are. And as the chair of the State Banking Commission, which is one of my 21 major constitutional and statutory responsibilities and duties, and is also as the chair of the State and Local Government Finance Division, which all the communities have to go through in order to issue debt on a tax-free basis. You can see why it's important that we have a strong torso, the triangle, the triad, and the greater Charlotte area. But we also have to have strong legs and arms. So I appreciate the opportunity to present this today. I do want to brag a little bit about, I don't have all the numbers, but I think Huntersville is even better. But going to the mayor, as chair of the State and Local Government Finance Division, we have about 540 cities, 100 counties. And if you average the amount of money that these cities have in reserve, it's about 25%. Cornelius doesn't have 1 time, 2 time, but nearly 3 times the state average is what the city of Cornelius has in reserve. And as smart as the mayor and the council and all the administrators are in Cornelius, I don't think any of them predicted COVID-19. But they knew as a community that was growing that they always had to be reserved and to be in a condition to withstand any economic shock. So I salute the folks of Cornelius and applaud them on doing what I do every day on a tax-free at the state treasurer's office, which is watching the pennies and the paper clips. So with that, I'll just open it up for questions on any subject you might want to ask me about. Oh, 2 last pieces of good news. As good as the pension plan is, we have one of the largest unfunded healthcare liabilities in the United States. As a matter of fact, several years ago, Pew said that our unfunded liability, the insolvency of the state health plan, was right behind the state of Illinois. When I was sworn in, it was at $32 billion. We just announced a $3 billion reduction in the OPEB liability associated with things that we did internally to reduce cost and bring efficiencies to the state health plan on behalf of those that teach, protect, and otherwise serve. Part of that was an unbelievable negotiation that we just signed with our Medicare Advantage. This is over our 65 over population, nearly 150,000 of them. 0 premium to the member, $4 premium to the dependent, no cost to the state. That one contract, this is not a penny in a paperclip, this is a big thing. That one contract is going to save $1 billion over the next 5 years. I got a call yesterday as I was leaving my yoga class, and a lady from Harnett County who was helping her mother, who is a retired school teacher. And they calculated that this contract that we just signed with Humana is going to save her mother, not to mention the money savings to the state, it's going to save her mother $3,000 a year. And they calculate on her fixed income, those savings are going to pay all of her property taxes and all of her utilities for a whole year. So, and lastly, we just maintained our AAA bond rating, and we issued $400 million worth of Connect NC debt last week at 1.48%. Jeff is used to former Representative Skip Stam going back and describing the Magna Carta as he was making his debates on the floor. We've gone all the way back to the Byzantine period and figured out that we don't think in the modern era that North Carolina has ever issued debt at 1.48%. And I believe, I'm not sure if it's Cornelius, Mayor, or Huntersville, just issued some local debt at about 1.2%. So this is kind of a hard thing for pension plans because we have so much money in interest-bearing accounts. But all the credit for everything I've talked about, I'm pushing the power and standing on the shoulders of the people in the investment management division, John Anarello on the investment advisory committee, as well as the taxpayers across North Carolina who make all this possible, especially with the Chamber of Commerce.
Mr. Treasurer, a couple things while as we maybe get questions from others, but I'm going to kind of do this in reverse and kind of go a little wonkish on the crowd this morning. But can you start with, let's work it in backwards order as you mentioned the items, the AAA bond rating. How does that impact the state of North Carolina?
Well, with all the divisiveness, thank you, Jeff, that we have in our society right now, I would say that every person on this Zoom and every person in this state agrees on at least one thing. And that is, if you have to borrow money for public education, public works, public roads, and public safety, being able to do it at the lowest possible interest rates means that you get more of whatever you're purchasing. And so the AAA bond rating is I don't want to use the medical term, it is a examination of the state's finances. I had a call with Fitch yesterday because we're getting ready to put, we put the Connect NC bonds in the oven last week, 400 million. We did 500 million yesterday morning with the Turnpike bonds, and we're getting ready to do 700 million for DOT. So I go into these meetings with Fitch, Moody's, and Standard & Poor's, and we just have a conversation. They're kind of surprised because I don't bring any props. I don't bring any white papers. There's not a flip chart. We just talk about where we are. And sometimes when you're dealing with rating agencies, as I said publicly a couple of years ago, you don't wait for them to call you. When they call you, it's too late. So we talk about these things, and I talk to them about my fears and my frustrations. And so it's just, so much in our society right now is just communication, if you can really call it that. And what I try to do, Jeff, is have a conversation with the rating agency folks, because that credit score is a big deal because only 13 states have it. And I suspect this time next year is going to be less than 13 states. And my only goal is the keeper of the public purse and the state treasurer is that if only one state has it, I want it to be us. And by the way, it's great for business recruitment to say that you are in a state that has a AAA bond rating.
Dale, can you walk us through just a little bit, different than, because businesses and so forth and enterprises that get bond ratings and other institutions, can you talk to, for the state, when you're talking to those investor groups that are doing the ratings, what are the general components that they look at, and what are the criteria to achieve a AAA rating?
Well, there's lots of criteria. One is having one of the best funded pension plans in the country, if not the world. And by the way, to put this in context, our pension plan is nearly 88% funded. The South Carolina pension plan is 57% funded. The Alabama retirement system is 62% funded. One of the Kentucky retirement government employee systems is 20% funded. And my point of saying all that to you is they look at three things. They look at stable tax policy. They look at certainty. They look at whether your state is populating or depopulating. They look at the pension plan. Now, obviously, they have a whole new department being built to look at the unfunded liabilities. And I want to applaud Charlotte here before I run out of time. But the on the unfunded liabilities on the health plan, and I'm saying this, and I'm going to parrot what Bill Gates said 8 years ago. Imagine all of you with your different backgrounds. Just imagine how you would finish this sentence. The single biggest threat to public education is. Bill Gates said 8 years ago, paraphrasing, the single biggest threat to public education is, you're never going to believe this, how states account and fund for the obligations of healthcare and pension for public service workers. The mayor will tell you that his three biggest expenses at Cornelius are pension expense, pharmaceutical expense, health expense, and interest on the debt. All those things, most of them come through the treasurer's office. And So my point of saying that to you is that this becomes really important to the rating agencies as they're trying to determine what your certainty is. Now, how do I go to them as the state treasurer of North Carolina, staring in the face of one of the biggest unfunded healthcare liabilities behind Illinois? And for all of you in the military, most of us have heard the word many times over our life. It's called II. We've heard it, we've actually probably said it, but very few know what it actually means. What it means is I hear you, I understand what you're saying to me, and I'm going to do something about it. So the way I've tried to approach Jeff about the unfunded healthcare liabilities is with an II. I hear their concern, I understand what they're saying, and we're doing something about it. Very quickly, applauding the city of Charlotte. 29 years ago, after they saw the city of Winston-Salem, the city of Charlotte started defeasing and putting money away every month in their budget for their hundreds of millions of dollars of unfunded healthcare liabilities for municipal workers in Mecklenburg County. And they saw that after watching Winston-Salem do it. Winston-Salem has an $86 million unfunded healthcare liability. They have $64 million in the bank. And that obviously helps Winston-Salem, and therefore, so it's just something that we do to try to earn our AAA bond rating. But once again, the credit goes to citizens and businesses like you that pay the taxes.
And picking up on what you're talking about, the unfunded liability we have with the health plan, you've been one of the largest advocates and one of the first people to really shine light on it. I've sat on committee hearings where you presented. I've listened to you in public discussions. So we have this problem. I've heard you say it may be our number one problem that we have from a financial perspective. So what's the answer or alternative approaches to solve this and get out of this hole? How do we turn the healthcare plan into the pension plan?
With simplicity, honesty, upwardness, optimism, and the ability to challenge assumptions. As I said earlier, we just negotiated a fantastic contract for our over 65s. But we have two other tranches of people. We have people who are retired at 50, but not yet eligible for Medicare. And then we have a lot of people that are active employees who, from 20 to 65. So what we're doing right now is we're starting to focus on the 50 to 65-year-olds. And instead of spending $175 million, which was done before I became the treasurer, on lots of different programs, we're going to be really damn good at 5 things as it relates to what's really driving up the cost of our healthcare. Hypertension, diabetes. That's why I eliminated all cost of insulin 2 weeks ago through the state health plan. As the cost of insulin has skyrocketed over the last 7 years, our drug adherence has gone down, which is costing the hell out of me on the state health plan. But the second thing, which is obviously the more controversial thing, is that as long as I'm the state treasurer, I'm going to work to get rid of secret contracts in healthcare, surprise billing, split billing, everything that's going on with healthcare billing and secrecy in healthcare. Yesterday was Senior Citizen Day at Harris Teeter. People, if they're given the tools, they know where to shop and how to shop for quality and value if given the tools. And I want to show you what I received as the state treasurer of North Carolina when I sent an open records request to the state hospital, otherwise known as UNC Healthcare. This is what I received back as far as the master charge list.
A little redacted.
Completely redacted. My point is and out of respect for, some of your sponsors and members, I just want you to close your eyes for a moment and think about where this state could be economically if we were known as the state with transparent healthcare. Warren Buffett said 14 months ago that rising healthcare costs are the tapeworm on the U.S. economy. He's exactly right about that. He's been my mentor for 32 years. Just close your eyes and think about where this state could be if we were known as the state with transparent healthcare. I will tell you, that businesses have to be registered through the Secretary of State's office, not the Treasurer's office, you would need 2 Secretary of State's offices running 24 hours a day to register all the businesses that would want to come here if we could be known as the state with transparent healthcare. What does that get you? That gets you more businesses. What does that get you? That gets you more employed people. What does that get you? That gets you more employed people with insurance. And what does that get the healthcare industry? More people walking in their door who can pay their damn bill.
So Dale, what does transparent healthcare look like?
Get rid of secret contracts. And we've had 25,000 providers who have said yes to clear pricing. We've been boycotted by all the hospitals, even the ones that stood to make more money. But it's not 25,000 lives who have said yes. It's 25,000 providers. You know, Dale Owen and Tryon Medical is 126,000 lives. He's part of the clear pricing. No more secret contracts. ECU physicians, tens of thousands of lives. They're part of clear pricing. We have more and more healthcare providers who want to get out of this business model of secrecy. They want to be able to tell people what the quality and the cost of things are, and they want to compete, because this whole issue about the cartelization of healthcare in North Carolina is further complicated by a certificate of need situation that keeps competition from coming in. And I don't have my pocket Constitution with me this morning, but I think it's page 14, section 34. I used to stutter, so I shouldn't say this. The perpetuity of monopolies is against the free will of our state. And that's what's happening with the further consolidation of healthcare across the world. The further consolidation of healthcare decreases quality, decreases access, and raises cost. And I've tried and look forward to anytime, any day of the week to work with the hospital association to try to resolve this issue. But once I offer them 200% of Medicare reimbursement, 200%. By the way, most of you were going to a family physician before the clear pricing project. That family physician was getting like 140% of Medicare reimbursement, and mental health specialist. 200% of Medicare reimbursement in order to sign on the clear pricing project. And finally, it got to the point, and I say this publicly because I know this has been recorded. I said, what level of reimbursement would it take to get you to get rid of these secret contracts? And the answer was, there is no level of reimbursement. And so that's what we're trying to do to lower healthcare costs in North Carolina.
I appreciate that input. One shift into the last topic on this area that I'd mentioned is the whole pension plan. And it, I guess, takes care of probably over 900,000 people. As you mentioned, it's approaching $110 billion in investment. Can you walk us through what the investment strategies are, what the investment vehicles, how do you do that? Are you picking up a copy of the Wall Street Journal and picking stocks? And so how does that happen with the state and a pension fund, and the limits that I know statutorily that you have to work within and the constraints?
Well, thank you. And I'm standing on the shoulders of the investment management team. I think everyone working in the investment management division was working there under the previous treasurer. Actually, our new chief investment officer was there, not with Treasurer Cowell, but Treasurer Moore and Treasurer Bowles, who this very lapel pin belonged to. There's three things. The pension plan gets money from every public service worker. And I want to say this to your chamber this morning, because I don't know what happens at the federal government, but every public service worker in this state contributes 6% of their salary to the pension plan, And then the employer they work for, whether it's OST or DOT or whatever it is, DES, they contribute, this year it's going to be 15% of payroll to the pension plan. And then you have the expense of running the pension plan. So CEM benchmarking just came out and said, among our peer group in the entire world, we were the second most efficient pension plan in the United States. We have cut Wall Street fees by $350 million. And going directly to your question, our asset allocation model from the last 50 years has generally been 60-40, 40-60. We have $10 billion of real estate. We own part of the Sears Tower. We have, unfortunately, $1 billion worth of timber that was previously bought by the treasurer that has not really made any money in 14 years. When you don't make money on something in 14 years on $1 billion, that's starting to be like 1 or 2% on the fundedness of the whole dang plan. We have about $5 billion of private equity and alternative investments. We have, for the first time in state history, we have index funds that are managed in-house. So Jeff, to your point, we're managing about 50 billion of this money in-house now with internal folks. So very proud of them. But going directly to your question, we just focus on what brings value to our participants. Our loyalty is not to big Wall Street, big healthcare, big drug companies. Our loyalty is to the people who teach, protect, and serve, and taxpayers like them. And secondly, and lastly, which is very archaic, when I was sworn in as state treasurer, I inherited $11 billion of commitments that had been previously made before I got there. That was commitments for 10 to 15 years going forward. I inherited $11 billion of unfunded commitments in this pension plan.
Wow. Can you, I appreciate that. Dale, can you talk a little bit just how COVID has impacted your office, either operationally or as you see it impacting the state right now from the treasurer's perspective?
Well, just I presume the mayor had COVID also. I don't want to be violating any HIPAA stuff, but in the words of the Jamie Johnson song, I've seen COVID in living color. When you have no symptoms, and I've never had a headache, never had a shortness of breath, never had a temperature, never had loss of taste or smell, never had GI issues. But even at 8 units of oxygen, my body was rejecting oxygen. My lungs were as white as this shirt. And so with a blood ox level of 85 on 8 units of oxygen, it's a very dangerous thing. And I get a little emotional about this because of not only what I've gone through, but more importantly, what my family went through during the end of March. I mean, if you just think about the protocols at the end of March, nobody knew really what to do with this situation. So directly to your question, the reason I bring that up is not to draw attention to myself, but to say that there's been a lot of talk about flattening the healthcare curve. Well, we better be talking more about flattening the economic curve. COVID-19 has the potential, in my opinion, to create and widen an economic inequality, the likes of which we've never seen in my lifetime in North Carolina. You know, Charlotte and Charlotte, they sound just alike and are spelled similarly. But I can tell you that Charlotte and Charlotte are in far different boats right now as far as flattening the economic curve. This is very serious business because we have a lot of people in this state, like I was for a third of my life as a garbage collector and motorcycle mechanic, who make their living with their hands and their back and their feet. They can't make a living with this. Obviously, they're using their hearts and their minds, but it's hands, back, and feet. So at the treasurer's office, we've been working remotely since the governor shut down the office. We have about 50 of our 400 people who are in the office, and I'm there 70 hours a week. So we continue to be in the check delivery business, but it is a real strain, and I hope I get invited back. But as I look across this state, I can tell you that people don't give a damn what political party you're a member of. They are facing the highest levels of job, food, health, and now educational insecurity and uncertainty. And that's really what's keeping me up at night, is what I can do is keep with the public purse to make some of that go away.
So to help, there's obviously some businesses that are thriving because they have functions that service things that happen with the pandemic.
Sure.
But what are the things for the businesses you see struggling? And this can be just, Dale's opinion. What do we need to do to get the economy revived and back like it was prior to March?
Well, as I promised, I would not be political, but what we have to do is we have to start convening the Council of State, and members need to be told to bring their toothbrushes. You know, a toothbrush meeting is a meeting that you come and you don't get distracted and you may not go home that night. The Council of State, which is 10 duly elected members of the statewide, the governor is the chair of the Council of State. The Council of State has spent less than 5 hours on flattening the healthcare curve since St. Patrick's Day. And I would love for the Council of State to be more transparent, more data-driven, more consistent, and get away from this notion that anytime you challenge an assumption, you're somehow political. And I'll go back to my own experience with COVID. You know, 4 weeks before I was in ICU, all you heard about was we don't have enough ventilators. 4 weeks after I got out of ICU, we have too many ventilators. 4 months after I got out of ICU, we're exporting ventilators. You know, as we learned, this may be as much vascular as it was respiratory. The ability to challenge assumptions is what we've lost in this state and in this country right now. And while these people are suffering with all these insecurities that I mentioned. So the bottom line is, and the last thing is this, we have to push the power away from Raleigh down to the common sense of the communities and understand that one size doesn't fit all. For example, if we are facing a hurricane and the governor issues an executive order and says we can double load tractor trailers so we can get the crops out of the field, that's a one size fits all. But let me give you another example. I attended Cook Elementary School in the early 70s. That's the elementary school between downtown Winston-Salem and Wake Forest University. After I left Cook Elementary School, it was converted to a middle school that had a capacity of 1,000 people, some of almost the size of me, 1,000 students. Now it's back to an elementary school. There's 175 people there. If we're creative enough, we can't do this for Reagan High School or maybe Myers Park High School or maybe your high schools. But if we're creative enough with buildings like that, which are underutilized, I think that we can be individually, school by school, be creative enough to get these kids back in class and in a way that is safe for, more importantly, not just for them, but for the people who work in that schools. So we just got to be more transparent, more consistent, more data-driven, be willing to challenge assumptions and creative.
Mr. Treasurer, I appreciate it. I know we're getting right towards the end of time. Your insight and wisdom is, again, just a blessing to the state of North Carolina that we're in such good hands that understand fiscal responsibility, how to manage a checkbook, how to actually read a financial statement, and how to engage with the businesses and the citizens of the state. Dale, I guess the last thing, is there anything you want to leave us with before we let you get on with your weekend?
Well, there are no weekends when you're the keeper of the public purse. There's so many things going on. I just want to say that I'm honored to be the state treasurer. You know, my life is not easy, you know, but it's pretty simple. I have somebody to love, something to do, and something to look forward to every day. And that's really all you need. But I do want to leave you with something that will make it maybe profitable for you to join this Zoom this morning. Of the $200 billion that we manage, that's 8 times larger than the state budget. We have one division called NC Cash. Now the official word is the Escheats Fund, but since I used to stutter, I'm advised not to use that word too often in a sentence. So we're going to call it nccash.com. There's $750 million there. We gave $600,000 to a lady last year who was the beneficiary of a life insurance policy. When I'm in town, which is basically one Saturday a month, I volunteer at the motorcycle shop that I used to work at Honda, Can-Am, and Winston-Salem. And when I went in there 2 Saturdays ago, the receptionist, 2 family members were there, and a veterinarian walked in from Clemens. 3 of the 5 adults there, standing there at that receptionist desk, had things at nccash.com. And the reason I'm sharing that with you, Mr. President, and others, is that when I spoke physically in Moyock, North Carolina, with the Currituck Chamber of Commerce, Josh Bass, who's the president of that Chamber of Commerce, the Currituck Chamber of Commerce had 2 entries at nccash.com. Looks like everybody's in good shape this morning, but if in the event you're losing any of the 4 items, the baby teeth, the silver teeth, the gold teeth, or the false teeth, you may also find those in nccash.com, because all the abandoned lock boxes in North Carolina, which they're drilled out, get sent to the treasurer's office. But to be far more reverent for a moment, we returned some World War II medals earlier this year to a family who'd been looking for them for 12 years. So go to nccash.com, check your name, your maiden name, your parents' names, your kids' names. There's 11,700,000 records there, $750 million. We only have 10 million citizens. I think your odds are better than playing the lottery. And more importantly, most importantly, I know that your Chamber of Commerce does financial outreach from time to time. Please go to nccash.com to see if whoever you're giving that money to doesn't also have entries at nccash.com. I just talked about the Chamber. $8,000 to a baseball team in LA. That's not Los Angeles. That's Lower Archdale below High Point. $10,000, I think, to the Hospice of DC. That's not District of Columbia. That's Davidson County. There's $1 million that belong to churches. We gave $22,000 to the Eastern Food Bank of North Carolina that bought 66,000 meals. Counties, cities have money, and lots of individuals. So check not just your name, but your business name. And I really appreciate the opportunity to be with you. And I've spoken to a lot of the clubs around and chambers around your area. And I just thank you all for being employers and taxpayers in the state of North Carolina. And you can learn more about all this at nctreasurer.com.
Mr. Treasurer, amazing insight, and appreciate again you taking your time out of a very busy schedule to spend with the members of the Lake Norman Chamber of Commerce this morning. Bill, I'll throw it back to you.
Well, Dale was just talking about Mayor Woody Washam. He had his own challenges over a week ago. Mayor, I see you on the line, and we're glad to see you healthy and moving forward. What's going on with the town of Cornelius?
Well, I appreciate the nice comments about the fiscal stability of the town of Cornelius. We put that as a high priority. Mr. Treasurer, thank you for your nice comments. We're doing well in Cornelius. We've got a lot of priorities. We're growing. The economy's coming back. The one thing that continues to get in our way a little bit is some of the challenges at DOT. I know you're aware of that, Dale. So if we can work our way through that and get our projects back on track here in our town, I think our economic move forward will take a great leap. So thank you for all you're doing. We appreciate the input today. Thank you. And
again, we have our chairman of the Chamber of Commerce, and Richard's a banker with First National Bank. You guys have been working extensively with small businesses, done an excellent job along with some of our other local community banks. Do you want to share anything about what you just heard in the presentation?
No, I think it was great content, and it really tells us what a very financially stable community we have and state we have. So, Dale, thank you for the content, and appreciate the information. I look forward to seeing additional positive results as we move forward through this environment.
Well, and I want to thank everybody for joining the Lake Norman Chamber of Commerce this morning. We have another event coming up. I talked about earlier that we've got our golf tournament on the 26th and a 0K on the 12th of November. On October 29th, the Lake Norman Chamber has recently repartnered with localjobs.com. One of the things that we want to do, Dale, is put people back to work. So we've partnered with localjobs.com. If you're under 50 employees, you're going to be able to list your job openings at no charge as a Lake Norman Chamber of Commerce member. And if you're over 50, there's a slight nominal charge, but we want to put the Lake Norman region and America back to work. That's going to be one of the things that we're focused on as a chamber. So that program is coming up on the 29th. We're going to talk about how we move forward with that partnership and how our chamber members can take advantage of that. I wanted to share one last thing. I know Jennifer had to drop off the call. Novant is a sponsor of our Leadership Lake Norman and Junior Leadership Lake Norman. And yesterday we had a program with our juniors, which are our high school juniors. We had 20 high school juniors that are 16 years of age. Charlie Jeter and I were talking to the juniors, and we shared with those students that when they reach voting age, and Mayor, I know you can appreciate this, former Senator Tart and Dale Folwell, also an elected official, when they reach voting age, we don't care who they vote for. We don't care what political party they align themselves with, whether it's Republican, Democrat, Constitution, Libertarian. But we care how they treat people differently than they are and think differently than they are. And one of the things I shared with those students is we've done a terrible job, my generation, the generation slightly older than me, those are younger than me. And I hope they don't learn from our example, because the way we're treating people who vote differently or think differently, we're treating them very badly. And we need to get beyond that as a country. And I really hope that the next generation, the ones coming up, learn from that and learn from our mistakes, because this can't go on. We can approach things differently. But I think most Americans want to move this country forward. We have the same objectives in end, and we have to stop this bitter partisanship. So we shared that message yesterday with our juniors, and hopefully we can see that next generation do a whole heck of a lot better than we did. Treasurer Folwell, thank you so very much for being with us today. And again, Jeff, thank you for moderating the event. This will go on YouTube and be pushed out to our chamber members. And we want to thank everybody, and we hope everybody has a wonderful weekend at the lake. See you, everybody.